So, we have come to the end of the decade. I certainly hope you guys have had a blast. It's certainly been an interesting one, to say the least. But today I'm going to be talking about my favourite Doctor Who stories of each year of the decade. So, it's going to be an interesting one because we have had an interesting decade in terms of who. We've had the Moffat era, and now we've got the Chibnall era. So, yeah, it's going to be a fascinating look back. So I hope you guys enjoy. So as a little disclaimer, for the gap years, I won't be spending too much time on them because to have a favourite, you need a choice of more than one. And yeah, so that's how it's going to work. So without further ado, let's get to it. 2010 was a massive year for Doctor Who, representing the biggest change for the show since the revival. A whole new showrunner, a whole new companion, and of course, a whole new Doctor. The 11th Doctor's debut adventure was a totally thrilling introduction to all these new elements, with Stephen Moffat throwing in a fantastic script. Matt Smith's performance was spirited and made use of the fact that this wasn't the first episode he filmed, thus starting his Doctor out even stronger. He really carried a strong aura of his portrayal here, contributing as to why Series 5 has my favourite characterisation of the 11th Doctor. The introduction to Amelia Pond was charming, and it really gave off the dark fairy tale vibe that Series 5 was aiming for at the time. I really wish they stuck with it all the way through. The episode had a warm element to it as well, and carried over that RTD-esque race against time feel, helping the shift feel not quite so jarring. And whilst Olivia Colman's later stardom was never foreseen, she did play Prisoner Zero, whilst brief, very menacingly, and I really loved what she did with the role. I love this episode, I really do. It's honestly still one of my favourite Doctor Who episodes ever. 2011 had The Girl Who Waited. The Girl Who Waited is a favourite of mine for other reasons than the usual. I think it's a pretty powerful story from the mind of Tom McRae, and of course, being the big fan of the Macabre that I am, and of course, a little bit of bleakness that certain episodes contain, I have previously talked about this episode on this channel, and naturally, I just love the innate darkness of it. I adore it. It's one of the bleakest modern Who episodes through the subtle reinforcement of how fragile life actually is when being the Doctor's companion. Never forget, Amy Pond suffered greatly in this episode, from a certain point of view of course. She was betrayed and abandoned by her imaginary friend. The older Amy was betrayed with a great load of coldness and harshness, an excellent display by Karen Gillan on taking her character and really twisting it. And Arthur Darvill of course puts in perhaps his best performance as a desperate Rory caught in an unsalvageable position, having to choose between his wife twice. 2012 was a year where less Doctor Who had higher stakes despite the brevity. Being the transitional episode between Series 7A and 7B, the Snowmen had a lot to carry over, such as the state of the Doctor after Amy and Rory's death. The man is grieving, suffering, and just straight up depressed, hence why it's devolved into a Scrooge-type figure, hanging out in the sky above Victorian London. As you do. The episode introduced Clara Oswald into the show, or, technically, Clara Oswin Oswald, the second Echo we saw after Oswin in Asylum of the Daleks, and to this day is still my favourite version of Clara. Combine this with Richard E. Grant and Ian McKellen being antagonistic as the Great Intelligence, as well as a genuinely tragic fate for a promising companion, you have yourself one of my favourite Christmas specials from the Moffat era, with a wonderful aesthetic and a true reprise of the fairy tale feel one last time. 2013's The Day of the Doctor. I mean, out of this year, it really couldn't be anything else. The Day of the Doctor was a huge effort and undertaking by all those involved, though not without its controversies. The 50th anniversary episode brought back arguably New Who's most popular TARDIS team, David Tennant and Billy Piper, with Tennant of course playing the 10th Doctor, and Billy playing the Moment, the weapon that supposedly ended the Time War. And along with this, a whole new incarnation of the Doctor, as played by John Hurt. So there's a lot to unpack, for sure. Now, the controversial element meant that the Doctor, as of this special, was no longer the last of the Time Lords, and some can say it undoes the character development through the RTD era. Personally, I did like the whole mythology aspect of the Doctor dealing with himself being the last of his kind. I really don't think there is a place for the Time Lords as a species in the modern era, and Hellbent kind of fed into that. But I digress. There are still a few intensely fan-pleasing moments that are amazing to see on screen, such as the 13th Doctor saving Gallifrey. It was a punch in the air moment to say the least, regardless of all the controversies. I do love Day of the Doctor mostly for the character interactions though. David and Matt had a stellar dynamic in that episode, but it was a phenomenal joy to see Tom Baker back on screen once more, proving he still has as much gravitas now as he did back at his prime in the role. Special mention to Paul McGann though for Night of the Doctor, a stellar short episode. It was brilliant to see his finale put to screen. 2014 saw the introduction of the 12th Doctor, a shock casting at the time, going straight from the youngest Doctor to one of the oldest, as played by Peter Capaldi. By far one of the best 12th Doctor episodes in a controversial Series 8 in my view, Fradline put the Doctor on the back seat and let Clara take command and be the Doctor for a day. A good foreshadowing for how reckless she'd be getting over the course of Series 9. Jamie Matheson's second episode was extremely creepy, introducing the Boneless, who turned people from living things into genuinely unsettling 2D wall paintings. It's quite something. The TARDIS shrinking is something we last saw in stories like Legopolis, but it's played more deliberately for laughs here until the climax of the episode, which actually has some properly tense TARDIS action. Clara's Doctor routine is definitely a highlight though from a character perspective. I mean, she's debatable when it comes to her likability, but her character is written very well here. Honestly, it's such a solid and fairly unconventional episode, I can't help but honestly recommend it, especially for capturing the dynamic between the Doctor and Clara as it progresses, changes and evolves. Heaven Sent, one of those episodes where so much has been said about it, it's hard to work out what's left. It is outstanding. Without a doubt, in my humble opinion, one of the very best and well-crafted episodes to ever come out of the modern era of Doctor Who. It's an episode that is about a fight against impossible odds, while being the most harrowing experience the 12th Doctor has ever been put through. Again, I've covered this prior on my channel. I'm a massive fan of the Macabre, as I already said, but I have a lot of respect for this episode. It's by far one of my favourite scripts ever contributed by Stephen Moffat, and arguably one of Rachel Talalay's career highlights as a director, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that surname. Special credit has to be given to Peter Capaldi though, for pulling off an entire episode as nearly the sole actor within it. The whole episode is one massive 50-minute monologue for the most part, but it's just incredible to watch. It's entertaining, it's disturbing, it's so unique. From a design and cinematography perspective, it looks absolutely stellar. Everything is subjective, but honestly, this is as close to perfect as Doctor Who can get for me. A truly experimental episode that is just astounding to see go on screen. 2016 being a gap year, we had very little Doctor Who aside from the Christmas special and Bill's introduction. So, we had the return of Dr. Mysterio. I think it's a decent special, but I have to adore how they tweet the character of Nardole into being someone who is sardonic, pretty and great to watch. A fantastic foil for 12. I'm a little bit sad that the whole Harmony Shoal thing just never went anywhere. Don't know where that was going, and they'll probably be never picked up again, so sucks to be that, I guess. Another highlight of that year was for me personally, as I was lucky enough to be a part of the Doctor Who fan show doing what I did best, talk about cosplay, and devising how to do the best Bill Potts cosplay on a budget with Crystal D. And after that, I was again lucky enough to go to the premiere of the short-lived spin-off Class and take centre stage on the Christmas ident for Doctor Who in front of 6 million people on BBC One. To say I was honoured was without a doubt an understatement. I'm a part of ident history. It feels great. Now for 2017, World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls. Series 10 was penned as a soft reboot for the Capaldi era itself, and there's something about it that felt so amazingly fresh, and this is no doubt due to the pairing of the Doctor and Bill Potts, without a doubt one of my favourite companions from the Moffat era. Pearl Mackie was sincerely well cast as the curious yet bold and enthusiastic Bill. So of course, having survived a series thus far, she was condemned to a grisly fate in the somber finale to Series 10, with the return of the Mundasian Cybermen, and the John Sim version of The Master. This story was a harsh contender for my favourite Peter Capaldi story, just below Heaven Sent. It's so dark and even gritty and low-key in places that I just love it about it. Two masters, but they're not the main antagonist. The main objective is survival. Bill essentially fills the role of a protected Terminator at this point, now a machine but on the good side. It is tragic though to see how her character was broken down into this, and she has honestly had a rough time, but she does get a happier ending, so it's kinda okay. Sim's Master is back and he's better than ever, being able to really throw himself into the calculating side of the Master rather than just the insane side, as he had become by the end of time. It was a delight to see him on screen, especially alongside Gomez. The first on-screen multi-master story essentially wrapped up the story of the Master pretty well, but we know this won't be the last time we see of them. And of course, Capaldi put on a sterling performance with his speeches and his final moments within the episode. A man who has lost everything yet again, now on the verge of committing suicide. Of course, that's just my interpretation of that ending, and it is kinda horrific either way, but he sells it very well. It's amazing. 2018 marked a brand new and admittedly controversial era for the show. Peter Capaldi departed and was replaced by Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor for Series 11. Stephen Moffat was replaced by Chris Chibnall as showrunner. And now, to be totally transparent with you, I'm not the biggest fan of Series 11, but I totally admire and respect a few of the things the series tried to throw at us. So, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. It was certainly an interesting introduction to the new Doctor, the new companions and the tone of the new series. It was surprisingly dark in places as well, with the villain Zim Shaw, whichever you prefer, ripping out teeth after murdering people. Bradley Walsh as well, being a cancer survivor, and a funeral for Ryan's gran who, as I've said before, got logopolist. But I think that legitimately helped the story be a bit more grounded, and I honestly liked that about it. Well, minus the teeth thing, that was just creepy. But you get the idea. It felt a bit more grounded with those real consequences. About as grounded as a story about a time traveler fighting aliens can get. The 13th Doctor did have a great start in this episode, with Jodie putting on her best performance yet, with a quirky Doctor who clearly likes to screw with her opponents. But Bradley Walsh steals the show as Graham O'Brien, who has instantly risen to become one of my favourite companions in New Who. In terms of the new era, it's set a promising start. Series 11 has been a bit shaky in my view, but here's hoping Chibnall has taken Series 12 to a whole new level. We'll see what happens. Of course, the only episode we had in 2019 was Resolution. Not much to say about it except that it was definitely one of the best Dalek portrayals since the early RTD era. They actually committed an act of mass murder as only a Dalek can, which is quite fun to watch actually. A highlight of that gap year for me was playing the Doctor myself in the DW 2012 fan film How Time Flies for the Series 5 premiere, with my own incarnation, the Purple Doctor. It was a pretty great experience, honestly. It's obviously a fascinating journey being able to take this beloved character of over 50 years and put your own spin on it. That is the beauty of doing fan films and even fan audios in some cases. They are great fun. And the Doctor Who fandom in itself has been going through a great spurt when it comes to fan creativity. So, if you're one of those fans that yearns to create anything, just go for it. Just do what you fancy and put it out to the world. And I honestly hope you guys enjoy the rest of Series 5 when it arrives. So there's my list. I hope you guys enjoyed, and feel free to tell me your own lists in the comment section below. I'm sure you got a lot of fascinating choices. So, until next time, I really hope you guys have a fantastic start to 2020, and I hope everything treats you well in this coming decade. And for you guys, I hope the best. So, until next time, see ya! And of course, enjoy Series 12 of Doctor Who. Bye!